They say youth is loud, full of noise and bravado. But have you ever noticed how silence grows more powerful with age? It's not the booming voices that linger in your memory. It's the words spoken softly with weight by a man who's lived not chased, but endured, not bragged, but built. There's a quiet power in a man who no longer seeks to impress, only to understand. If you're a man over 50, 60, maybe 70, this is for you. You've survived love and loss. You've carried burdens in silence. You've watched the world change fast, while your soul slowed down to hear what truly matters. And maybe somewhere along the way, the world started treating you like a shadow, invisible in restaurants, ignored in conversations, reduced to a stereotype, or worse, pitied. But here's the truth. No one says out loud, you are not invisible. They're just not looking deeply enough. What you carry, your presence, your stillness, your story has gravity. The kind that when shared with care makes others feel seen, especially women who've lived long enough to crave sincerity over sparkle. A compliment from a younger man might sound sweet, but from a seasoned man, it lands differently, not because of the words, but because of the soul behind them. A man with nothing to prove can say the most ordinary sentence and make a woman remember it for a lifetime. This isn't about being smooth learning lines or pretending to be younger. It's about learning to see and say what truly matters. Today, we'll talk about compliments, not the kind that float like perfume and vanish by morning, but the kind that make a woman feel seen, not sized up, admired for her essence, not her appearance, acknowledged for her quiet, unshakable strength. We'll explore why older men have a hidden advantage in conversation, the types of compliments that touch a woman's soul, when to speak them, and when to stay silent. We'll look at how to avoid well-meaning words that go sideways, and share real examples from men like you who changed someone's day, not by being charming, but by being real. This isn't just about women, it's about you reclaiming your voice in a world that sometimes forgets your value. If you've ever wondered, do my words still matter? The answer is yes, but only if you mean them. In a world that spins fast and talks loud, there's something magnetic about a man who speaks softly and says what others are too afraid to say. Let's begin. There's a myth in modern society that as a man ages, he fades. His charm dulls, his relevance declines, his words lose weight. But that's a lie. Real power doesn't shout, it listens. Real presence doesn't perform, it remains. The older a man gets, if he's been paying attention, the more dangerous he becomes in the best way. Why? Because he's no longer desperate to be seen, and that makes others want to see him. Stillness is magnetic. Younger men rush to fill silence with stories or jokes, hoping to impress. But a powerful man doesn't need to prove he belongs in the room. His stillness says it for him. Picture a crowded gathering, laughter chatter, people trying to outdo each other. Then you notice a man sitting quietly, sipping his coffee, observing, not judging. He's not trying to be the center. He just is. That's you, or it could be. Stillness grounded in self-respect draws others in, not because you've taken energy, but because you've conserved it. Your life experience is your language. There's a rhythm to a man who's lived heard in his pauses, his restraint, his refusal to react to nonsense. Every scar, betrayal, and tender moment has shaped your speech, your gaze, your presence. When you speak, you don't just deliver information, you transmit wisdom. Take James 71 at a dinner with friends. A younger man was describing how hard it was to find someone who gets him. James didn't interrupt. He said softly, "Maybe the question isn't who gets you. Maybe it's whether you're showing yourself in a way that lets someone try. The table went quiet. He didn't raise his voice or quote a book. He spoke from 50 years of observing human nature. That's what experience gives you, a voice that lands without competing. Here's a freeing truth. You don't need to perform anymore. You don't need to audition for acceptance. That hunger to be liked, validated, or desired fades, and in its place comes a quiet offering. I am here, as I am no show, no pitch, no act. That's the most attractive posture a man can have, especially to a woman who's also lived. She's tired of pretending, tired of men trying to impress her, tired of feeling courted for approval rather than understood. When you show up with integrity, groundedness, and attentiveness, she feels it, the difference between chasing attention and offering presence. You may not get second looks from 20-somethings, and that's a blessing. The women who see you, the ones who lean in when you speak, who smile with both eyes, are the ones who've walked through storms too. They don't want loud, they want real. They're not interested in flattery. They crave resonance. They've been judged for their appearance for years. They're ready to be seen for who they are. When your presence makes them feel safe emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that's unforgettable. You become invisible to those who can't see past youth, but unforgettable to those who value depth. Let's name your quiet gifts. First, emotional steadiness. You don't panic at silence or overreact, making people feel safe, especially women weary of emotional volatility. Second, authentic observation. You don't just glance. You notice the subtle shift in her tone, the way her eyes light up when she speaks about her granddaughter, the pause when she mentions her late father. That can't be faked. It comes with time and intention. Third, boundless presence. You don't need to prove anything, so your attention is clean with no hooks or silent expectations. That's rare, and rare things get remembered. Pause for a moment and reflect. When was the last time you made someone feel truly safe just by being near? What's one thing you've learned about love life or loss that no book could teach? What's one compliment you could offer, not about appearance but essence? Write it down or say it aloud. This isn't just theory. It's about reclaiming your voice, your gaze, your presence. You are not the man you were at 25, nor should you be. You are layered softer in some ways, sharper in others. You're no longer searching for who you should be. You're settling into who you already are. And when you speak from that place, the right woman listens differently, not with her ears, but with her heart. In a world addicted to noise, a man who speaks with stillness, sees with clarity, and carries his age with quiet pride is unforgettable. Most compliments are forgettable. You look nice today. Love your dress. Great smile. They're not wrong, but they're not memorable. They're like a spoonful of sugar sweet but quickly gone. If you've lived long enough, you've realized a compliment doesn't land because of what it says, but because of what it sees. Culture teaches men to praise a woman's looks, her figure, her youth. But for a woman over 50, those compliments can feel invisible, even insulting. When she spent decades cultivating wisdom, resilience, and depth, a comment about her earrings isn't a compliment. It's a missed opportunity. Imagine you're at a cafe. A woman shares how she left a city she loved to care for her aging parents, brushing it off as nothing. You pause and say, "That couldn't have been easy to walk away from your own life." That kind of sacrifice says a lot about the heart you have. She looks at you not with surprise, but with a softness that says, "You saw me." That compliment doesn't just lift her mood, it changes how she sees herself. You didn't admire her, you witnessed her. And that stays. What makes a compliment truly magnetic? First, specificity, generic praise feels cheap, but noticing something small, a tone in her voice, a gesture of kindness, the way she listens tells her you're paying attention to more than the obvious. Second, sincerity. It's not just what you say, but the energy behind it. Women who've lived through charm and disappointment have a radar for authenticity. Don't fake it. Speak only what's real. Third, freedom. A real compliment has no strings, no silent hope, no expectation. You're not saying it to be liked. You're saying it because it's true. And truth spoken freely is rare and powerful. Here are 3 types of compliments that women, especially those in the second half of life, quietly long for. First, compliment her strength. Not vaguely like you're a strong woman, but specifically, you carry things with a grace that doesn't ask for attention. That's rare. Or, the way you stayed calm through that I don't think most people could have handled it like you did. This says, I see what you hold and how you hold it. Second, compliment her emotional impact. Everyone wants to feel their presence matters. Try. You make the space around you feel calmer. I felt that the moment you walked in, or people seem to breathe easier around you. That says something about your spirit. It's not about beauty, it's about energy, and that's what she'll remember. Third, compliment her journey. Instead of "you look good for your age," which is a backhanded insult, say, "There's something about the way you've grown into yourself. You wear your story well." Or "You've aged with such quiet confidence." That doesn't happen by accident. This says, I respect where you've been and admire who you've become. Take Daniel, 65, divorced, out of the dating world for nearly 20 years. He met Celeste at a bookshop's poetry reading. They spoke about travel and music. She mentioned raising 3 children alone while working 2 jobs. Daniel didn't react immediately. He looked at her and said, "That kind of resilience changes a person. I can hear it in the way you speak, like you've had to be stronger than most people ever knew." Celeste didn't speak at first. She blinked, then said quietly, "No one's ever said that to me before." They spoke for another hour, not about travel, but about life. Daniel didn't flatter her. He honored her. That's the difference. Be clear, some phrases sound harmless, but feel like tiny betrayals to a woman who's done the inner work. "You look great for your age" translates to, "You've aged, but surprisingly well. You're prettier than most women." Your age says, "I'm still ranking women by appearance." "You remind me of my ex" means, "You're not fully yourself to me." These don't make her feel seen. They make her feel compared, reduced, or analyzed. Here's a secret most men miss: every compliment you give says as much about you as it does about her. If you compliment her wisdom, it shows you value substance. If you praise her steadiness, it shows you admire restraint. If you acknowledge her courage, it reveals your own relationship with vulnerability. Your words are a window not just into her soul, but into yours. If you've lived the heartbreak, regret, and stillness, you carry that depth. You don't need to invent it, just speak from it. Try this invitation this week. Instead of complimenting a woman's outfit, notice something about her being not her style, but her essence. Maybe it's how she laughs without holding back, the way she lets silence linger, or how she looked into your eyes without glancing at her phone. Then say it simply, softly, with no performance. Watch what happens. You might unlock something sacred. Think about the compliments you still remember, the ones that hit differently that made you stand taller, that reminded you who you are. They weren't about your clothes or loud, they were true. That's the power you hold, not to impress, but to remind, not to pursue, but to witness. Because the compliments that stay aren't always clever. They're the ones that feel like recognition. And recognition to a woman who spent decades being misunderstood is the most romantic thing of all. Timing turns words into impact. A beautiful sentence at the wrong moment falls flat like a love song played at a funeral. Most men, especially well-meaning ones, stumble here. They say too much too soon or speak to fill silence to impress, to avoid awkwardness. But a compliment, especially from a man with life behind his eyes, isn't decoration. It's recognition, and recognition has a rhythm. Have you ever been comforted too soon? You were processing pain, and someone said, "It'll be okay," or "You're so strong." They meant well, but the words felt rushed, dismissive. The same is true for compliments. Spoken before a woman is emotionally open, a compliment feels like intrusion, not invitation. It becomes about your need to say something, not her need to be seen. Poor timing shifts the spotlight from her experience to your performance. But when a compliment rises, organically landing on open ground, it becomes a mirror, a shared breath, a moment she won't forget. Here are 3 golden moments to offer a compliment. First, when she shares something personal, a story about her childhood, a loss, a moment that shaped her. She may not realize how vulnerable she's being, but you do. Don't pivot or joke. Say, "That couldn't have been easy, but you carried it with a grace that speaks volumes about you." Or simply, "Thank you for trusting me with that." These aren't flattery, they're honoring. They say, "I didn't just hear your words, I felt them, and I value who you became to live that story." Second, when she does something thoughtful, most would miss remembering a friend's name, refilling your tea, giving full attention when others are distracted. These quiet kindnesses often go unnoticed because they're not loud. But when you name them gently, like the way you do small things makes people feel seen even when they don't realize it, it lands. It says, "I'm watching, not judging, noticing, not performing." That attention is intoxicating. Third, when she least expects it, not when she's dressed up or trying, but when she's just being quietly, naturally, without agenda. A compliment in stillness with no preamble or payoff feels like truth rising from the ground. Try you carry yourself like someone who's made peace with herself. That's rare. Don't chase her reaction or wait for a thank you. Let it land like a stone on still water and let the ripples unfold. Consider Stephen, 62, who met a woman at a music event. They talked easily. She shared about raising her autistic son, how difficult but rewarding it was. Stephen, with good intent, said, "That's amazing. You're such a warrior. I admire you." She smiled politely, but something shifted. Later, she told him gently, "I wasn't looking to be admired. I was just sharing. What I needed wasn't praise, it was presence." Stephen spoke too soon. His words were generous, but rushed, rewarding her experience instead of holding space for it. That moment could have gone deeper if he'd waited just a little longer. Women over 50 often say, "I don't want a man to always say the right thing. I want him to know when not to say anything at all." Silence is not awkward. It's a listening space. Sometimes the most powerful compliment is your attention, not your analysis or encouragement, just your calm, open presence. It says, "You don't have to perform. I see you even in quiet." For a woman who spent her life expected to perform, that's a gift. Know when to stay silent, when she's still raw, when she hasn't invited feedback, when the moment is emotionally sacred and words would cheapen it. Sense that sacred pause when something real is forming, and your job is to protect it, not fill it. If unsure, say, "I don't have words right now, but I'm with you." That speaks louder than 10 clever lines. Reflect on this. When was the last time someone said something at the right moment and it stayed with you? When have you spoken too quickly and watched the energy shift? What's one compliment you could offer? Not because it's convenient, but because it's true and ready. Write it down. Practice patience with your words. Let your heart lead your timing. A well-timed compliment isn't a trick or bait. It's a door opening a space between two souls where mutual recognition can enter. When a woman feels seen, not flattered, not impressed, but truly seen, she doesn't just remember the compliment. She remembers you not for your cleverness, but for your presence. A compliment isn't neutral. It either opens a door or builds a wall. The secret lies in whether your words come from presence or performance. Compliments that connect, that reach a woman's emotional center, have one thing in common: they see her, not her appearance, usefulness, or proximity to your expectations, but her essence. Take Earl, 76, widowed, who volunteers at a library. He noticed a woman with her grandson, calm and steady, the kind of presence that anchors a room without trying. As she packed up, Earl said, "It's clear he feels safe with you. That kind of steadiness is rare." She didn't reply right away, just looked at him surprised, soft with a smile that meant, "Thank you for seeing me." The next week, she brought him a cup of tea. No games, no pursuit, just quiet acknowledgement. Earl didn't compliment her body. He honored her impact. That made all the difference. Why did it work? Earl noticed something invisible most would see a grandmother with a child, but he saw emotional safety and named it. He expected nothing, no flirting, no agenda, just recognition freely given. And he spoke from experience. A man who's lived sees strength in silence, knowing the power of subtle. This kind of compliment reaches beneath the surface into the memory, into the soul. It says, "I'm not just watching, I understand." Now contrast that with Dennis, 68, charming, witty, but stuck in the past. At a community potluck, he met a woman new to the neighborhood, elegant, quiet, a deep thinker. They had a great conversation about music, family, and cities they'd lived in. Then Dennis said, "You've got a body that doesn't match your age at all." That dress, wow. Her smile froze. She excused herself to help with dishes and never returned. Dennis didn't understand what went wrong. He thought he was giving a compliment, but he gave a spotlight she didn't ask for, a comparison, emphasizing age over essence, a judgment wrapped in praise. Instead of being seen, she felt sized up her body, the focus her soul left behind. After years of objectification, she wasn't flattered, she was exhausted. What Dennis said might have worked at 30, but at 60, it felt invasive. There's a difference between causing a reaction and creating a moment. Mature women don't want to be told they're still hot or look good for a grandma. They want to be seen for how they hold space in a room, listen when others interrupt, or soften people with their presence. That's the noticing that feels like respect, not evaluation. Before offering a compliment, ask yourself, is it about who she is, not just how she looks? Does it reflect something unique I observed, not something anyone could say? Am I speaking from presence, not performance? Would this feel honoring, even if she didn't respond? Is there zero agenda behind it? If all answers are yes, speak. If not, stay silent. Let your stillness do the noticing. Here's a practical guide. Instead of saying, "You're sexy for your age," which wounds by focusing on age, say, "There's a confidence in how you carry yourself that's magnetic." Instead of, "You remind me of my ex-wife," which steals her uniqueness, say, "There's something familiar in how you care. It feels like home." Instead of, "I didn't expect someone like you to be so sharp," which implies surprise, say, "You speak with a clarity that makes people lean in." Instead of, "You've aged well," which reduces her to surface, say, "You've grown into yourself beautifully." The shift isn't about saying less, it's about saying deeper. Reflect on your personal history. Think of a time you complimented someone and saw their face light up. What did you say? Now think of a time your words made someone retreat. What did you miss? How did the energy differ? The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Every interaction is a chance to learn how your presence shapes a space. At a certain age, beauty changes. It settles into the bones, lives in gestures, radiates in silence. It no longer needs to be chased, just honored. When you offer words that see her, not her makeup, but her meaning, not her style, but her story, not her age, but her evolution, you do more than compliment. You validate. And that connection lingers. Long after she forgets what you wore or where you met, she remembers how you made her feel. Not every compliment is meant to impress. Some are meant to heal. We don't talk about that enough, especially as men. We've been taught to compliment to earn something, a smile, a favor, approval, connection. But when a man truly matures, he no longer speaks to receive. He speaks to reflect, to say, "I see what you carry and I honor it." This compliment doesn't land in the ego, it lands in the heart. For a woman who's lived enough to know the difference, that's where the magic begins. In psychology, emotional validation is the experience of feeling understood, not fixed, improved, or judged, but seen in truth. When you say, "That must have been hard," and yet you kept going, you're not cheering her up or offering advice. You're creating a space where her pain has dignity. That's what makes validation healing. When you acknowledge not just her appearance, but her effort, not just her light, but her labor, it reaches deeper than admiration. It reaches her self-worth. This validation compliment is a powerful tool. If she shares something difficult, like caring for a parent with Alzheimer's, navigating divorce, or rebuilding after loss, don't say, "Wow, you're strong." It's well-meaning, but skips the depth. Instead, say, "That couldn't have been easy, and yet you carry yourself with such calm." That says a lot about your spirit. This names the weight of her journey and honors how she continued. She doesn't feel praised. She feels witnessed. Another method is the narrative compliment, reflecting something from her story back to her. If she says, "I spent the last few years taking care of my mom before she passed," you say, "The way you showed up for her says everything about the kind of daughter and woman you are." It's not poetry, it's presence. It tells her, "I was listening. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to honor you." Vincent met Claire at a photography class. She mentioned working in hospice care, holding the hands of dying people, laughing it off as weird or too heavy. Vincent paused and said, "It takes a rare heart to sit in that space and not run from it. You must carry so many stories. That's incredibly beautiful and brave." Claire was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "No one's ever called it beautiful before, just sad or strange." That compliment didn't just impress her, it reframed her life's meaning. That's healing. When someone feels validated, their brain releases oxytocin, the chemical of connection, trust, and bonding. Studies from Dr. John Gottman show emotional safety is the top predictor of long-term connection in relationships. What creates it? Being seen without performance pressure or pretense. When you offer a compliment that reflects her internal world, you're not just speaking, you're building trust. At this stage of life, trust is far more powerful than charm. Compare healing compliments to ego compliments. Instead of, "You don't look your age at all," say, "There's a strength in your stillness. It feels earned." Instead of, "You're way too pretty to be single," say, "There's a peace about you that feels grounded, like you've done your inner work." Instead of, "You've still got it," say, "You carry yourself with the confidence of someone who knows her own worth." One flatters, the other validates. One reaches for attention, the other offers presence. Here's a challenge. Think back to a time you felt unseen, misunderstood, reduced. What did you wish someone had said? Now take that tone, that validation, and offer it to a woman who may never have heard it. The most powerful compliments often come from the wounds we've survived. A woman is not her job, hairstyle, smile, or children. She is all those and more. The silence. She survived the battles. She didn't brag about the grace she carried in rooms that didn't see her. When you speak to that, when you say something that doesn't just describe her but recognizes her, you offer something rare: healing. Not because you're trying to fix her, but because you've become a man who's learned how to see. Not all damage comes from cruelty. Some of the deepest cuts come from kindness delivered carelessly. For many men, especially those who mean well, it's not malice that causes disconnection. It's unawareness. You thought you were offering warmth, admiration, even charm, but she heard, "You don't see me." Not really. Let's name the quiet mistakes that create distance instead of intimacy, because even a well-intentioned compliment can land like an insult if it touches her body but misses her soul. Take the classic, "You're beautiful for your age." You might think it's flattering, but to a woman who's been reduced by decades of appearance-based praise, it lands like a veiled apology. "I didn't expect much, but you've aged surprisingly well." It centers her age as a liability, suggesting she's hiding it well. To you, it's appreciation. To her, it's judgment in disguise. Another landmine. "You remind me of my ex-wife." Even if meant fondly, she hears, "You're not you. You're a reference point, a memory, a shadow." Comparison removes her uniqueness, collapsing her into someone else's story. No woman wants to feel measured against another, especially someone she's never met. Connection requires freshness, a sense that this moment is hers, not borrowed from your past. Then there are backhanded compliments. "You look good for a grandma." "You're in great shape." "I wouldn't have guessed your age." "You're still sexy." These sound like praise, but they carry assumptions that beauty fades with age, and hers is an exception, that grandmothers aren't desirable, that she exists to be validated for preserving youth. These don't speak to her character, impact, or evolution. They reduce rank and separate her from herself. Many women, especially in the second half of life, carry a quiet grief, the grief of being seen mostly for their appearance roles or usefulness as mothers, lovers, objects of desire, but rarely as whole beings. When you offer a compliment that centers her surface, it doesn't feel fresh. It feels like history repeating itself, reminding her of all the times she wasn't seen for more. That's why even soft words can sting. It's not just the phrase, it's the energy underneath. A compliment with an agenda, comparison, or subtle superiority won't land as love even if it's not offensive, even if your tone is sweet. If your intention is approval seeking, insecurity masking, or admiration performing, she'll feel it. The moment becomes less about her and more about you. Attention says, I noticed you. You're interesting. You made an impression. Presence says, I'm here with you without filter or performance. I want to understand, not define. When a woman feels presence, her nervous system relaxes. Her heart opens, her eyes soften. When she senses attention without depth, she retreats often with a polite smile. A nod and exit, not because she's offended, but because she's disappointed. Most men think compliments reflect her value, but powerful men know they reflect the soul of the giver. If you compliment her thoughtfulness, it shows you value inner beauty. If you admire her steadiness, it shows you know the worth of emotional maturity. If you praise her resilience, it shows you understand struggle and carry your own scars with honor. Before you speak, ask, am I complimenting her in a way that reveals who I am too? That's what she's listening for. Not just who she is, but who you are when you look at her. Here's a quick guide to mistakes and better alternatives. Instead of, you're pretty for your age, which is backhanded and age-focused, say, you carry your age with presence and grace. Instead of, you remind me of my ex, which steals uniqueness, say, there's something familiar about you in a comforting way. Instead of, you still look great, which reduces to surface, say, you have a glow that feels lived in and real. Instead of, you're not like most women your age, which implies others are lesser. Say, you've lived with such intention it shows in how you speak. Take 5 minutes to reflect what's a compliment you've given that didn't land as hoped. What energy were you carrying? How could you reframe it from a place of presence practice? Because relearning to speak with depth is a skill that grows with humility and attention. You've lived, lost, learned. Don't let your words sound like a younger man's. Let them sound like you, the man who's seen enough to mean what he says, and say it when it matters. She won't remember your compliments for their cleverness, but for how they made her feel, not evaluated, not impressed, but understood. Compliments are often seen as gifts handed from one to another. But in truth, every compliment is a mirror telling a story not just about her, but about you, how you see what you notice, the lens through which you engage the world and yourself. The way a man compliments a woman reveals more than his vocabulary. It reveals his values. A shallow man notices appearance. A performative man notices what others see. But a seasoned, emotionally awake man sees what others miss: the stillness in her listening, the steadiness in her gaze when others are flustered, the quiet grief behind her strength. Why? Because he's lived long enough to recognize what matters. The compliment you offer tells her what you hold sacred. If you speak to her essence, it means you've done the work to discover your own. Elijah, 72. A retired teacher who lost his wife 3 years prior met Lydia at a community book club. She was graceful, well-read, deeply self-contained. After a few meetings, Elijah said, "You walk like someone who's lost battles but didn't lose herself." Lydia was silent for several seconds, then nodded. She later told him, "I've spent most of my life hiding the weight I carry." That sentence didn't just describe me, it freed me. That revealed Elijah's sight and heart. Only a man who knows loss and stayed tender through it could offer such a compliment. Women, especially emotionally intelligent, mature ones, hear more than words. They listen for where you're speaking from ego, need, or truth. What you're pointing at, her shape or spirit. How much of yourself you're showing. Is it a script or personal? If you say you're so easy to talk to, it's nice. But add, that tells me you know how to listen. In a world where people mostly interrupt, and now she sees you, your attention values awareness. That makes a moment stick. There's a masculinity that flexes, loud needing validation. And there's one that grounds rooted in quiet clarity, speaking without trying to convince, felt more in tone than text. A grounded compliment doesn't say, "Let me show you how observant I am." It says, "I've been paying attention to what matters." That's not just attractive, it's unforgettable. Most women aren't looking to be dazzled. They're longing to be recognized by someone who sees through noise. Before you speak, ask, does this reflect what I admire in life? Would I say it if no one else heard? Am I speaking from experience, not theory? Is this a compliment only someone like me would notice? If yes, say it, especially if it's quiet. In that moment, you're not just describing her, you're revealing yourself. That's the true art of being unforgettable. We're taught to use compliments as tools, to get attention, break the ice, gain favor. But a man who's made peace with himself uses words to stay in the present, in relationship true to his integrity. He's not dropping lines, he's offering presence. He's not trying to look wise. He is wise, his words carrying the stillness of a man who's wrestled with silence. A compliment isn't a transaction, it's a testimony. It's standing before another and saying, "I see something in you that resonates with something in me, and I honor it out loud." When you do that with no pretense, you become a mirror, not reflecting her hair or makeup, but showing her what the world misses, what she's quietly proud of. When you say, "I admire how calm you are in chaos," she hears, "This man values peace over drama." When you say, "There's real dignity in how you carry your story," she hears, "This man understands legacy." When you say, "You make people feel safe," she hears, "This man knows how to offer safety, not just ask for it." In every compliment, she's learning about you. Be the man who notices things worth noticing. She'll remember what you said not for its cleverness, but for how real you were. Some men enter a room and speak loudly. Others enter quietly, and somehow everything softens. They don't demand attention, perform, or charm. They offer presence. That more than beauty, wit, or effort is what most women, especially those who've lived long for, to be seen, not sized, heard, not handled, understood, not analyzed. True presence is rare, not because it's complicated, but because it requires what most fear to give full attention. There's a difference between being looked at and being seen. Being looked at feels external, visual, reactive, even objectifying. Being seen is internal, felt, saying, "I notice who you are, beyond how you appear." A woman who's been evaluated for years by men, media roles, stops expecting to be seen. She's used to being functional, admired, or dismissed. But when a man shows up with stillness without reaching, needing, or judging, she feels something ancient stir. "I can relax. I don't have to perform here." That's the beginning of true intimacy, not romance or seduction, but recognition. Emotional safety isn't built through compliments, but through consistency, curiosity, and calm attention. Once felt, everything changes. Her guard drops, her voice softens, her truth surfaces. Presence whispers, "What charm never can? You don't need to impress me. I already value you." This is the new seduction, not roses or clever lines, but a gaze that listens, a silence that protects, a compliment that lands like a warm blanket, not a spotlight. Marianne, 61, sat with a man on a park bench. After a quiet moment, she sighed. "Sometimes I don't even recognize myself anymore." He didn't fix it or joke it away. He said, "I don't think you've disappeared. I think you've outgrown who the world said you were." She cried not from sadness, but because he saw what she hadn't put into words. That's the silent power of being seen, and it only happens when your presence is stronger than your performance. You don't need perfect words to create impact. Sometimes the most unforgettable moments come from saying less and meaning more, a gentle nod, a soft smile at the right time, a compliment spoken, to honor, not influence. What she'll remember is not how well you spoke, but how deeply you noticed. Ask yourself, when was the last time you offered someone the full weight of your attention without agenda? When did you speak from your story, not just your mouth? What would it look like to become a man whose presence is the compliment? These aren't questions of style, but of substance. At this stage of life, substance is the most attractive quality you carry. She may not remember your face or the clever thing you said on the second date, but she'll remember how it felt to be around you. Was she on edge or did she soften? Did she feel watched or welcomed? Measured or free to be? That's the legacy of presence. In a world that praises loud men and shallow attention, a quiet, grounded man who sees not just glances is the rarest kind of seducer, not because he tries, but because he doesn't have to. You've made it this far, not just through this guide, but through life. You've endured years that didn't ask your permission. You've loved, lost, risen again. You've failed quietly and grown in places no one saw. Now you carry something most men never earn, even if they live to 100 presents. Not the kind that seeks applause, but the kind that remembers who you are without needing others to remind you. When offered sincerely, not as a strategy, but as a way of being, it's the most powerful form of connection. Don't speak just to fill silence, flatter to be liked, or admire to be remembered. Speak because your life has taught you to see what matters, the woman who shows up anyway, even when it hurts. The quiet beauty of someone who no longer chases approval. The tenderness behind resilience. These aren't things you memorize. They're things you witness only after living long enough to understand their cost. Someday your words will be forgotten, but their impact won't. She might not recall the exact sentence, but she'll remember what happened inside her when you said it the moment she felt seen. In a time when most people scroll, scan, swipe, and summarize each other, a man who slows down to notice, who sees beneath the surface, is medicine. Here's the invitation tonight, tomorrow, or this week. Speak gently, not because you need something or want to impress, but because you've learned that seeing someone is the highest form of respect. Say you've walked a long road and I feel it in how steady you are. Or there's something about your presence that makes others breathe easier. Or say nothing, just listen fully, openly, as if her story matters. Because it does. Your words carry weight not because you're older, but because you've earned them. Your silence carries power not because you lack something to say, but because you've learned when not to speak. Your compliments are not decorations. They're reflections of a man who's become more than what he looks like, more than what he owns, more than who he used to be. A man who knows connection is not about impressing, but honoring. And that never goes out of style. You've come this far because you're searching for truth, not just words. Maybe a sentence made you pause a moment, reminded you of someone you loved. A compliment you never said, but wish you had. Hold on to that feeling. There's another man out there right now, older, quieter, unsure. He's not flashy, doesn't say much, but his heart is full of things he's never had words for. Your story might give him the courage to speak. Think of a moment when someone really saw you, not your job, not your looks, but you. What did they say? You're the reason this family holds together. I feel safe when I'm around you. You have a gentleness that calms storms. Share that. That memory, that compliment might spark another man to find his voice or offer a healing word to someone never truly seen. You don't need to be a writer or eloquent, just honest. Leave a comment. Start a journal, send a message to someone you've thought about for years. Say what's true, not because you expect something, but because it's time. Your words spoken from lived experience with no performance are more than sound. They're permission proof that connection is still possible in a disconnected world. Try this. Write one sentence starting with "the best compliment I ever received was," or "the one thing I wish someone had told me when I was younger is," or "here's something I've never said out loud before." Then say it, share it. Vulnerability is no longer a weakness. It's legacy. Your voice, your presence, your seeing might be exactly what another man needs to remember who he is. So don't wait. Speak gently. Speak clearly. Speak now. The world is listening.